Hey everyone, thank you for joining. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. So if you can't, let me know. Just type in the comments. I can actually see them today. I usually like to make sure before I start running my mouth and then you guys tell me you can't. So other than that, I'm going to dive right in. And if you come in and you don't hear anything, then just say something before you, if you're watching the replay, thank you for joining as well. Go ahead and type in hashtag replay so that I know if you watched it live or on the replay. Dana is here with me live and gave me the thumbs up. Thank you. She is one of my OU coaching girls, so she knows I need that thumbs up before I start going. So I'm going to jump right in to this topic. I know that some of you guys, thank you, Jeanette. I know some of you guys are on your lunch breaks, so I want to make sure that I get to the point. I'll stick around afterwards for Q&A if you guys have any, but this is kind of a super quick decision. So what I'm talking about today is low carb versus low fat, how to determine which one is best for you, and like, why do you even have to choose in the first place? I don't know. Do you have to? We'll talk about that. So first and foremost, why do you have to choose? So let's just get that out of the way. So like I said in the description for this, like, low carb today is what low fat was in the 90s. You know, we keep resurrecting a lot of the same diets over and over. And low carb has come in so many variations, from Atkins to now keto, you know, so there's different ranges of what people consider low carb. So it goes from no carb to low carb, anywhere within that. And a lot of people are wondering, is that a route that they should take? And, you know, so I wanted to bring this discussion. I know I've done topics before talking about low carb, but I wanted to bring it up while talking about low fat. So the reason why I'm saying that you have to choose, or the reason why you would even want to bring this up in the first place, is first we want to discuss the fact that weight loss is determined by a caloric deficit, period. So that's why either one of them are pretty valid for weight loss, because if you reduce a macro in any way, it's going to naturally lower your calories, which is going to help you to lose weight. So actually losing weight is going to be determined by lowering your calories. The type of weight that you lose, so fat loss versus just losing anything, bone mass, muscle mass, organ mass, you know, chopping off a ponytail or a limb, those are going to be two different things. So losing weight, just you can lower your calories, you will lose weight. That's what most of us are familiar with. The type of weight that you're losing is determined by the type of calories that are eaten within that deficit. So a lot of times we talk about calories in versus calories out. Did a whole video about that that we rewatched a couple of weeks ago, so you guys can go back and I can link to that if that's something that you want to dive deeper into. But that's the basis of that, is losing weight is determined by lowering your calories. The type of weight that you lose is determined by how you're eating within that calorie split. So your macronutrients, your protein, your carbs, and your fat. So when I'm saying, why do you have to choose? Because I feel that we need to first understand that it's not just about the calorie reduction, as we talked about in the previous video. It's about spreading those calories out in a way that you lose fat instead of just losing weight, because you don't want to lose muscle mass, because that's where your metabolism comes from. So when we're looking at those three, protein, carbs, and fat, protein is not negotiable. So if you're looking to lose fat, your protein is non-negotiable. So that's why I'm just taking it off the table as far as this discussion goes. If you want to go ahead and lower your protein in order to reduce your calories, that's fine. But that's what the typical just low calorie debate does. So that's why we're not talking about just low calorie versus low fat versus low carb. We're just talking about low carb versus low fat, because they're both a reduction of calories in general. So in order to keep your metabolism high and not lose muscle mass, remember, muscle equals metabolism, your protein should be a non-negotiable. So when you're deciding, start there. When you're figuring out, like, okay, I want to lose some fat, I'm going to lower my calories, you're not touching that protein, because protein needs, if anything, increase when you reduce calories. They don't decrease. So no matter what phase you're in, your protein should pretty much either stay the same or go up. There's not really a reason that it should go down. So unless you are under strict doctor's orders because you are suffering from like liver or kidney disorders that affect your protein metabolism in some way, like the way that your body digests protein, take protein off of the calorie lowering chopping block. So your calorie leverage when you are looking to reduce one or the other is going to be found in your carbs or in your fat. So now that that disclaimer is off the table, let's talk fat or carbs. So if your calorie reduction is coming from either your fat or your carbs, or maybe a very strategic mixture of both, that is going to be ideal for fat loss. So the main thing to remember before we even begin the discussion is that neither one of them are magical. There's nothing magical about reducing fat. There's nothing magical about reducing carbs. Don't believe the hype. The fitness industry thrives on extremes. So typically it's going to bash one and make the other, like, you know, the king for that specific trend. So typically that's what you're going to notice. Most successful diets are typically reducing one or the other in some really strategic way. Sometimes it's just a strategic reduction of calories, which is the baseline, the basis for all of it. So neither one is magical, carbs or fat. Neither one really actually needs to be extreme. So like I said, if something is demonizing one or making the other like angelic, then typically it's probably off balance. Neither one actually needs to be extreme, but you can and should feel free to tilt the scales to make it sustainable for you based on your personal preference. So the key is your sustainability and the personal preference. So a lot of times those are the things that I say, and people say like, do I need to lower my carbs, or my fat's too high? They plug in their macros and they're like, my fat's always over the top. And I'm just saying, like, it's just really based on personal preference, your fat or your carbs. So you want to lower your calories, lower fat or lower carbs. If you want to choose which one, you're going to choose based on sustainability and personal preference for you. So basically, I just want to share 2 ways for you to understand what that means for you. So just 2 super quick ways to determine your individual sustainability and preference, whether you're choosing for yourself or if you're a trainer trying to help a client to decide which one to choose, because trainers is something to know. Like, don't just pick one and ride that off into the sunset and think that all of your clients need to reduce the same macro. It's going to be different. Get to know your client and you'll be able to help them a lot more. So the first one is going to be taste preference, which is, I think, obvious, but most people don't realize that macros are often combined, so they may not always recognize their taste preference. So take a minute to recognize what yours is. So that's going to be the most obvious, is which mouthfeel do you like? Most people have a specific mouthfeel they like better, either carbs or fat. Ask yourself if you like things like creamier, like if you get a salad, do you prefer ranch dressing or do you mind having an oil and vinegar? Like, is that a substitution that you can make, or is that like, no, that just totally made the salad disgusting? Or like dipping sauces, do you like something creamy or do you like something that's maybe more like sugar based? So like a like barbecue and sweet and sour type sauce for like if you have like chicken nuggets, for instance, versus like a ranch or maybe a honey mustard or something like that. That's usually letting you know creamier mouthfeel means that you probably prefer fatty, and a sweeter mouth is typically means that you want more carbs. So start paying attention to some of the stuff that you're eating to understand, because like I say, a lot of times they're combined. So if your protein is combined with fat, you may not realize that you prefer fat. If you're somebody that's okay with leaner proteins, then maybe fat is not a big deal for you. If you like a lean cut of steak versus a marbled cut of steak, if you don't mind chicken breasts over chicken like thighs or legs or something like that, then maybe you prefer something. You don't mind reducing your fat a little bit more. That's where you can take the cuts out for you. So just some examples to kind of help you work through that is start paying attention to the cuts of meat that you like, the type of sauces that you like, the type of side dishes that you like. Like, are you the type of person that's like, yeah, I can substitute a salad for a baked potato or vegetables for a baked potato? Or are you like, no, I got to have my baked potato? And when you have that baked potato, what are the types of things that you're putting on it? So just start paying attention to if you tend to lean more one way or the other. And if nothing else, you can go to like a MyFitnessPal or something, punch in your macros and see if there's one that you're always over on. That is probably the biggest clue. If you just type in the way that you eat without trying to maneuver anything, see if there's one that you're over on. If you're over in carbs and fat, then maybe you need to think of strategically lowering both. But that's the first thing, is to just kind of look at your taste preference. So Rachel said chicken thighs for life. Now, Rachel, that is a perfect example. I'm glad you punched that in, because like I am totally a white meat person. I I am a white meat person through and through. Like, I could do chicken. I can do like lighter fishes. I don't even like fattier cuts of fish. Like, it's almost harder for me to eat good fats because I'm not a total fat person. So, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what I do, but I want to try to give you guys some examples of how to use it for you. So I'm glad that you shared that, Rachel, because that could help you to understand which is best for you. So taste preference is the first one. And now your second one that you would use, because these two work together, is your caloric deficit preference, because this matters as well. So you may find that maybe you're a person that likes fatty foods, but you also like to eat a lot of food. You like to have more meals throughout the day. So what I mean by this is that the reason why the low fat craze worked so well back in the day was because it was a super easy way to lower calories. Lowering carbs lowers your calories, but lowering fat lowers them fast, because fat has twice as many calories as your protein or your carbs. So when you reduce your fat, like, it drastically lowers your calories. That's why it worked and everybody jumped on that bandwagon. So what they did was a lot of times they lowered the fat in something and just increased the carbs in it, or things had more sugar. So that was the problem with the low fat craze, was that typically we added a bunch of other stuff to make it taste better. So things that were super low in fat were super high in carbs because it had to taste good somehow. Usually those are the two things that make something taste better, is the carbs and fat. So lowering fat lowers your calories like a lot, because it has so many more calories in it. So like a couple tablespoons of oil has as much, calories as like a whole chicken breast or like a potato or something like that. So it's really important to see, if you eat really high fat, you'll notice that you use up your calories fast. So if you only eat a couple meals a day, or you don't mind eating a couple meals a day, or you only want to eat like once or twice a day, and you find it hard to get in enough calories, then increasing some fat may be a good way for you to do that, because you're going to get in more calories while eating less food. So if you have a higher fat intake, that's helpful for getting in the calories in less meals or in smaller meals. If you feel like eating, like you like to feel like you're eating more, especially when you're dieting, maybe like just a psychological trigger for you, like you don't want to have less food, like you just want to kind of feel like you're eating a lot all day long, then lowering fat can actually help you to have more meals, because you're going to be able to just eat more. So fat makes you have to eat less because you use up the calories really fast. Reducing the fat helps you to spread the meals out a little bit more. So hopefully I'm not frozen for you guys. It looks like I'm frozen on my end, but hopefully you can still at least hear me okay, even if I'm frozen. So if those are the two big things that I would say, is look at your taste preference, look at your calorie preference. If you enjoy having lots of meals and feeling like, oh, I'm not even really on a diet, then having a little bit lower fat could possibly help you. If you feel like, I love the taste of fat, that is my preference, and I don't like eating, I'd rather just eat one huge meal at dinner and maybe a lunch or something like that, then maybe having higher fat would help you to get in those calories and, still feel full. So that's up to you. That's one of the things that I would say to look at, is those two things. The most important thing to remember is your body, your rules. You make the rules here. Pay attention to what you like and don't like, and use those to your advantage when you are trying to decide when and where to lower your calories. So once you've looked at those two things and you've weighed out both preferences, you can figure out if you lean heavily in one direction or the other. And if it's split right down the middle, then maybe it could just pretty much come down to deciding meal by meal. You can just decide, okay, in the morning, I like, to have some fatty meats, or I like to put more butter on my toast, or whatever it is like that. And you can decide at that meal that it's going to be higher fat, and then you can decide at another meal that you're going to reduce the fat. And you can just kind of be strategic throughout your day if that's the way that it works out for you, if you look at it like it's down the middle. If you are paying attention, like your attention would mainly be placed just on your protein then. So if you're that person that you look and you're like, I can't decide because I like carbs and fat and I like them together, then you would just eat a little bit less of both. So that means that you wouldn't necessarily drastically reduce one or the other. You would just reduce them both. So in the case of, so maybe if you are starting with maybe a caloric split as far as your macronutrients of 40% carbs, 30% fat, 30% protein, then maybe you would reduce your carbs and your fat by maybe 5% or so, or you would make them equal. So you would do like, you would keep your protein at 30% because remember, we're not touching that. And then you would just distribute things a little bit differently with your carbs and fat. So you would go 35% carbs and maybe 25% fat or something like that. So you can maneuver those a little bit more. You could also just, like I say, just eat less of them in equal amounts. So when you have those meals and you have your carbs and fat and you have them together, you're like, I'm going to eat this. I'm going to enjoy the crap out of it. And I'm going to leave just a little bit on the plate, or I'm going to get a smaller serving of it or something like that. So like, for instance, if you get, you'd like going to Starbucks and getting lattes there, and you're like, I don't want to do low, I don't want to cut the fat in my milk. I don't want to like get any of those like skinny syrups or anything like that. So instead of getting a grande, I'm going to get a tall. That's one way that you would just have less. So that way it reduced your calories just because it was a smaller serving size versus having the same serving size and deciding I'm going to reduce my fat of by my milk. I'm going to get non-fat milk and regular syrup, or vice versa. I'm going to get, you know, skinny syrup and regular milk, or you can do both. You can just feel like I'm going to get that same size, but I'm going to get skinny syrup and non-fat milk, which is disgusting to me. But if that's something that you like, then go for it. I am a carb girl. So in that instance with me, I would rather have non-fat milk and full sugar syrup than have non-fat milk and skinny syrup, or full fat milk and skinny syrup. Like I'm not going to do the skinny syrup. Like I want full sugar syrup. So I would just reduce my fat. In that case, that's what I would do. You may find that that's different for you because you just can't stand the mouthfeel of a non-fat latte. So just some of the ways to make that work for you. Hopefully that helped you guys. Like I said, I'm frozen on my end, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. If you had any questions, then go ahead and post those. I just wanted to kind of give you a general idea of how to pick just 2 very quick ways. Look at it. Think about what your taste preference is. Think about what your caloric preference is. Do you like carbs and want to eat a lot of meals throughout the day? Then you're probably a lower fat person. If you are, you know, you like carbs, okay, but you can't eat that many meals, you still need to be able to get in your carbs, then maybe you're a higher fat person and a lower carb person, because the increased fat would help you to get the calories in a little bit more. So neither one, like I say, is a magic bullet. Don't believe the hype of the fitness industry. They do want you to fall into a cult of one or the other, of like, eat low carbs is, you know, queen of everything and going to cure all of my life's ills. It won't. It will reduce your carbs. You will lose a little bit of weight, and that's that. But if it's not sustainable for you because you're a carb lover, then it doesn't work for you. So in my case, fat typically goes first. So if I wanted to do nothing else and keep most of my stuff the same, like if I wanted to eat exactly the way that I was, that is when I personally, this is not something that you should do or that is like EM2WL recommended, I personally allow my fat to drop as low as 23%. So usually if I'm cutting, my fat is in the like 23 to 28% territory. So usually probably around 25, but if I'm like, I need more food that day and all day long I'm just like, I just want to munch on stuff, then I may reduce the fat a little bit more. Now, the caveat to that is that if I ate more fat, I probably wouldn't need as many meals, but psychologically, I like to eat a lot. So it helps me to be able to, I can get in more meals throughout the day. And because it's harder for me to get in my protein with just 1 or 2 meals, I need my meals to be split up a little bit more. So just one of the things that I do is I focus on my protein. And then if I'm looking to maneuver anything else, my protein is always around 30 to 35%. And then I'm maneuvering usually in the fat area. That's just me. Pick which one works best for you. This is not advocating a low fat. I'm not saying do not drop your fat below that 23 to 25% range, because your brain still needs fat in order to function. Your body needs fat in order to function. And yes, eating fat burns fat, but not in the way you think, which is an entirely different session, which we can talk about if you guys want to. So thank you everybody for joining. Hopefully that kind of helped you guys to figure it out. Use those 2 tips and let me know how they work for you. Tell me, are you a carb person or a fat person in the comments below, because I want to make sure that you actually did this exercise. Or are you split right down the middle? That's okay too. If you're split, you're split. So thank you for joining, and I'll talk to you guys later.